Thank you, Dave. Yeah, this is so I've been home for 5 weekends now. 5 weekends of teaching in this series. This is the longest I've been home consecutively in 5 years. Um, I'm gone a lot. I have not been 5 weekends in a row home in a long time. Typically, every year in October, like last year and the year before, I'm home the first weekend of October, and then the next weekend I'm home is Christmas. I'm just gone for just a slew of weekends after weekends. I'm home midweek, but then the rest of the time I'm gone. For those of you guys that don't know, so I serve as the West Coast Youth Director for the Romanian territory in the Church of God, which means somehow west of the Mississippi is the West Coast, and then all of the Romanian Church of God churches in the West Coast I typically travel to, and I work with their youth ministries, and I work with their pastors, and I go out there either to teach or to kind of share with them, how they can replicate the small group discipleship project or other projects that we do and so on. And that's really what I do most of the time as I travel. I travel to the East Coast a lot as well, which is not within my territory or within my purview, but I know a lot of ministers that are out there. So when we started this series, the week before that, I was in Atlanta. Now that the series is done today, next week, I'm in Atlanta again. I don't know why I'm in Atlanta at the beginning and at the end of the series, but I'm visiting 2 different churches there. But as the West Coast Youth Director, Adi Budyan is actually my assistant. And what's great is he gets to come with me and travel on this trip. Keep him in your prayers, because the pastor there was like, hey, does your assistant preach? And I said, well, as a matter of fact, he does. He does preach. And he goes, great, we're going to have him preach youth night and Sunday. And I was like, well, why don't you just take it easy a little bit and just have him preach youth night? So he's going to be speaking out of Sacramento, at a different church in Atlanta, and I know that it's got him a little bit nervous and so on. He's praying about it, and definitely keep him in your prayers. Definitely keep me in your prayers, please. I covet your guys' prayers. I definitely need support as I travel different places, and a lot of times when I travel, I guess it's just the Romanian way, pastors will be like, hey, great, we have you for 3 days. We want you to teach 6 times and do Q&A sessions and then do a bunch of counseling. And then I come home exhausted. So just keep me in your prayers. So with that, we are in the last part of the relationship series. That is my Google Voice number. I get texted questions at that Google Voice number every time I travel, pretty much, because I do a lot of Q&A, especially after seminars and things like that. So have you guys been enjoying the relationship series so far? Good. We have too. It's been really entertaining and kind of exciting. I already have several questions here that you guys are sending me in right now, which we'll get to in a minute. But I did want to preface tonight by making something clear. Sometimes, and you see this all the time, especially with fake news. Yes, CNN. That's exactly right. Where things that people will say, they'll be taken out of context, or sometimes I'll have to deal with things, which hasn't happened at all this time around, so you're aware. I don't think it's ever really happened, where a person will ask me a question but not reveal everything in that question. Well, they'll be like, well, is it okay if I date this guy and he's a little bit older? Well, okay, if he's a few years older, and you're obviously ready for marriage, and that's something that you're pursuing, that's great, and then some young lady will go home and be like, see, Mom, Eddie said that I can date this guy who's a decade older than me. No, you understand? That's not, so I just wanted to preface that everything that we give in response, please understand that we're giving it in response within context of what we've been talking about for the last 5 weeks, all right? Don't take things out of context, all right? So anyway, with that, first question, I like eager, and that's good that people have been eager about this. So I've been close friends with this guy for a long time, and he recently told me that he loves me. That's a weird start, all right. So you guys in a relationship? Nope, but he loves me, all right. Even though we're friends. Yeah, that's exactly what I was, okay. I'm conflicted because I think he still needs to mature and has some growing up to do. However, I think if he grew up some more, I would say yes to him. I don't want to hurt his feelings, ruin our friendship, or let a potential husband go by. What should I do? Great question. Hello, caller. You're on the air. That's a great question. So I'm going to read it again. I've been close friends with this guy for a long time, and he recently told me he loves me. Even though we're friends, I'm conflicted because I think he still needs to mature and has some growing up to do. However, I think if he grew up some more, I would say yes to him. I don't want to hurt his feelings, ruin our friendship, or let a potential husband go by. What should I do? So there's this great verse in Song of Solomon, I believe it's chapter 2, verse 7, if I'm not mistaken, where Solomon says to the lady in the story, he says, not yet, do not awaken or arouse love until it pleases. All right, now you guys have heard me say that before. And it's this great sense of one person is really ready to crank up the relationship or start a relationship or has really, taken that really courageous and vulnerable step where they say, hey, I really have feelings for you. And the other person is saying, not yet. Just hang on a second. My advice to you, now this is within the context that you are ready for marriage. If you're 14, no. You understand? Just say no, order pizza at school, go take your English 9 class and just, be into cartoons, wake up Saturday and eat cereal and just put that on the back burner, all right? Amen to that. If you're not 14 and, you're within a year realistically of being ready for marriage, then it's a potential thing. If you're waiting for that person to mature, then just let them know that, hey, look, I'm not ready yet. But I am willing to, if you're like if you're like 20 and he's 22, do you understand? And it's something that you might be interested in, just let them know, look, I'd like us to continue to be friends and to see, if this might grow into something one day, but I don't feel like we're ready to step into that yet, Or, I'd also encourage you to also be transparent with them. I don't feel like, if we started a relationship today and got married in a year from now, what plan do you have? And I think it's a fair question to ask a young man. What is your plan? What is your plan for us? What is your plan for life? You understand? I think it's a completely fair question to ask. I think that some people might be bothered by being asked that question, and I think it's a good bother. All right? I think it's a very good bother. There are young men that I mentor, and nothing lights a fire underneath them like, Eddie, I see this girl and I want to get married, and all of a sudden I need to figure out, 8 years of college in one, and nothing will light a fire underneath a guy like realizing there's this next step in my life and I'm not as prepared as I like to be, and I got to get ready for it. Right, is there something you wanted to share on it? All right, you'll take the next one. All right, 12 questions so far. Should a married person have a close friend of the opposite sex? I mean, for those of you that didn't catch that, somebody in the audience said, no. So I have 2 things to say about that. Typically, it's usually a girl that'll have a close friend that's a guy, not the other way around. Usually this will be a guy asking the question, typically, not always, but typically. Will it be a guy saying, hey, what do you think about, my wife having a close guy friend, all right? Because guys have a hard time having close girl friends that are girls, without having any sort of attraction or desire and so on, because we're so sight-based, right? There's a bunch of guys that are nodding yes to that. So, the reality is this, if you look at relationships in your life, the closest, if you have like a circle, and this is the closest people to you, and then there's another ring on the outside, and those are like the closest people to you can be like your mom, your dad, your brothers, and your sisters. Then there's another ring, which is like your best friends. Then there's another ring, which is bigger, and then those are people that are like, good friends of yours, acquaintances, maybe like a cousin that's related to you, and you like them, but you're not necessarily, super duper close. And then you have acquaintances, and you have people, and so on. When you get married for the first time in your entire life, a new ring is formed on the inside, and your mom and your dad and your brothers and your sisters are now the second most important people in your life, and your spouse is the first most important person in your life. And when you have kids, they're also a part of that inner circle. Everybody else is on the outside. So the reality is this, I have brothers and sisters, and they were always, my mom and my dad, they were always first most important. But when I married Simida, they all became second. I was her husband first, and I was a brother and a son second. Does that make sense? And so whenever you're having really close friends, I tell you 2 things about it. Number one, when you pull somebody who should be in a third ring into a second ring or into a first ring of closeness, you're really going to create some vulnerabilities and some tensions that the enemy is going to take advantage of. All right? I have a lot of friends, and my wife has a lot of friends. I have people that I mentor and that I disciple. My wife has people that she mentors and that she disciples. But I don't have any close friends that are girls. Absolutely not. And I think that it's incredibly wise to protect ourselves from that. I'll give you an example. My cousin who I grew up with, we were closest to friends. His name's Emil. And me and him were really good friends. We used to go to this church, Apostolic Faith. That's actually where I got saved. I became a Christian there at a camp meeting. Great church. And what ended up happening was he started dating this girl, Andrea, who we were all friends with. And Andrea says to me, she's like, you know what, we never talk anymore. We never like hang out. We never. And I was like, well, yeah, like if there was a status above everybody's head, like this is me, and then this is mom, and this is dad, and for Simida right now it would be wife. Back then I wasn't married. This is Emil. He's my best friend. I said, your status went from friend to best friend's girlfriend, right? Because that's what you are now. You're my best friend's girlfriend. And she goes, okay, so what? We can't be friends, unless me and Emil break up. And I was like, no, because then you become best friend's ex-girlfriend, all right? That's the truth, right? And she goes, so we can never be friends again? I said, pretty much, yeah. That's just the reality of it. Because that's the way that relationships work. We don't live in a vacuum. They're not independent relationships that happen. Does that make sense? So I would strongly encourage you, don't allow the enemy to have opportunities. Also, if your spouse is uncomfortable, if my wife is uncomfortable that I have a really close best friend that's a girl, she's more important to me. Do you understand? And if that means I have to lose a friend for it, I will lose a friend in a heartbeat. Why? Because she's the only one who's in the inner circle. Can you imagine if my son had another man that he looked up to as a father? How would that crush me? Right? No, this is my son. All right? We're in the inner circle. Everybody else is outside. And that's the way that it has to be. And you have to protect that. Like, marriage is not just something that you fight for to have well. It's something that you have to protect constantly from the enemy forces that are trying to attack it and destroy it. Do you want to share something on that?
He said he doesn't have any girl friends. I also don't have any guy.
Yeah, of course, because I would murder them. Anyway. So, I know sex before marriage is wrong, but why is talking about sex before marriage wrong? Why is it such a taboo to ask questions about it? When is the right time to talk about, and when is the right time to talk about, and what should you talk about? So physical intimacy is the word I'm going to use because it's a lot more kosher. Is something that, so between you and your future spouse, that's not a conversation that technically has to happen until you're, in marriage, because that's something that's reserved for marriage. If you're courting a young man or a young man's courting you, and you guys are, in a process of seeing if you're a good fit for marriage, and you're a month in, that is not a conversation you should have. Is that the kind of conversation you should have with your parents? I think yes. But let me just hang on, because half of you were like, all right, hang on. I think yes, but I also think it depends. I also think you have to understand where your parents come from. All right, I think you have to grasp that. All right, in my case, my dad was a sheep herder when that was his first job. All right, he lived in a village and he was a shepherd. All right, a lot of people that I meet in ministry school or traveling around, they're like, oh, I'm a PK, a pastor's kid, right? I'm an SK, I'm a shepherd's kid. My dad was actually a shepherd, you understand? My mom was raised in an orphanage for a number of years, all right? They came from a communist country, so they have a completely different comprehension about this type of subject. If I brought this conversation up with my dad when I was 14, it would be the most awkward and uncomfortable conversation to have on earth, and it would only get worse. Do you understand? So I'm just being honest with you. I think you have to take that in stride and take it in good measure. If you have older siblings that you respect and look up to, I think that's a fair conversation that you can have. If you have mentors, like if you're in discipleship and you have a discipleship leader or somebody to look up to, or if you guys want to ever talk to me and Simida about something like that, that's totally acceptable. If you and a young man are courting, or you and a young lady are courting, and you guys are getting closer and closer to marriage, all right, and you guys are really pursuing this, and you're going, you know what, we're both talking about it, we both want to marry each other, pretty much the next thing that's in line is at some point in time, he's got to pop the question, you guys should totally pursue marriage counseling, premarital counseling. You should totally pursue premarital counseling. Me and my wife do it. Frate Legado and his wife do it. It's excellent. I would encourage every young man and every young woman before they get married to do premarital counseling. There's a lot of information, a lot of conversation that you guys can have there. Did you want to say anything? Good.
I don't know if I don't know if they're talking about parents, or I feel like they're talking more between each other. Why is it so taboo to talk about sex between each other before marriage? Because talk leads to action. I don't know. Maybe just stay away from that because, like Eddie said, that's for marriage. So I don't know what you would actually need to talk about that you can't just talk about after you get married. I can't think of one thing that would be a problem, a concern.
Yeah.
I don't know. So
is it a sin to talk about it? No. Is it incredibly stupid and it'll lead you into sin? Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. Oh yeah. That's a real easy one. How do you know when a girl likes you, a guy, or is it like the rumors where you never know if she does?
Well, she makes herself available. She's always around you, always smiling towards you, always answers your phone calls or texts.
Laughs at everything you say, even if it wasn't funny.
Exactly. Everything you say is amazing. I don't know what else. I mean, we kind of make it obvious. And if she does not like you, she avoids you. She doesn't answer your text messages or make some very one-worded answers. How are you? Yes. Okay, that means move on.
How are you? Yes.
And I don't know. We're also shy and don't know, like, I shouldn't say something. He should say something if he likes me. So we're waiting on you. Just say something.
Yeah. Girls will put themselves in your path. You understand, fellas? If they're interested in you, they will put themselves in your path, i.e. Ruth and Boaz, all right? Boaz is sitting there. He takes an interest in this girl. He wakes up one day and she's like at the foot of his bed. Okay, that's a bit extreme. Girls, if you're trying to let a guy know that you're interested, that's a good way to creep him out. Heads up. Don't do that. Why do girls say no when they really mean yes?
Are you sure she means yes?
Is she sure she means
Sometimes we're a little confused ourselves, but just take her on her word. If she says no, go with the no, and then if she actually meant yes, she'll have to grow up and tell you, actually, that was a yes. Just, no, okay, bye. Or, you don't want to eat this? Okay, bye. You don't want to share this? Okay, bye. Don't be like, but are you sure? Don't wait around. If she says no, just move on. And if she actually meant yes, hopefully she grows up and tells you she meant yes.
Yeah, those kinds of games are really immature. I'm just being straight with you. They really are. The idea that, no, I'm fine, but I want you to read my mind that I'm yes, that's what a 9-year-old does when they pout and they throw a fit. Do you understand? And that's not acceptable for mature people. It's not, because it creates confusion, it creates chaos, it creates bad communication. It also creates an environment where one person is saying, my needs aren't met, so now the entire marriage needs to revolve around me. And the other person is stuck trying to figure out how to make that happen. And men pout too, all the time, by the way. They get upset, they give you the cold shoulder. That's not acceptable. You guys, a great way to understand it is this, is you're either working for yourself, you're working for your wife, or you're working for the two of you as a completely separate entity. But the two of you are one now. So I'm never going to be working for myself. I'm never going to be working for Simida. I'm always going to be working. I'm not working for her and she's working for me. I'm not sitting there trying to love her and she's sitting there trying to love me. I'm not sitting there trying to make sure that I take care of all of her needs and she's trying to take care of all my needs. We're always working towards us. That's a whole separate thing. And there are times where I'm going to want to make it about me. And she might think that the loving thing to do is to make it about me. And really we need to make it about us, always. Because either one of those two things are not good. So I know that we are on the topic about relationships. as girls, when we get into a relationship, we put so much into it. And when it doesn't go right, it can be very hard. What advice do you have about dealing with heartbreak? And I think men should be educated about how they can hurt girls and how they should be serious before getting into a relationship. I agree with that statement, but I do also want to say that I've seen examples on both sides. I think that there are men that are not serious, and that for a young lady, it's very, very, very easy to just give your heart away if a man's giving you attention, if a young man's giving you attention. I know that for young ladies, whenever a young man that is, you might be semi-interested in starts really paying a lot of attention to you and complimenting and so on, your desire is to just give yourself away. And it's not a bad thing to want to be completely committed in that sense, but it is a bad thing to not guard your heart and to dive way too far into a relationship, because you really have to guard yourself. You have to protect yourself. And I know that the same thing happens on the opposite end, where there's like girls that will lead on guys, and guys will go be head over heels over girls and so on, and it won't work out, and then they'll be heartbroken for a long time. But what I did want to say is this: I think that both men and women, you guys need to be guarded as you move into a relationship. I think that as men, we need to be really sensitive to how hormonally and psyche-wise, a girl has a natural desire to be completely committed to marriage, and so will over-invest sometimes in the sense of putting themselves in 110% when the other person isn't as committed. And that we need to be sensitive to that and to understand that, I could really hurt this girl. All right? And in the same way, I think that young ladies need to understand that men will oftentimes, especially young men, will oftentimes try to find their worth and their value. They won't say it, but we'll try to find our worth and our value through success, right? And so our success is if I can get the golden-haired girl. If I can get that girl in a relationship, then I will have arrived. And all the other guys are going to look at me and say, dude, that guy's dating that girl, and his stock just went up. Do you understand? And whenever we place our validation as men in the girl that we can get, or the girl that we can, make our girlfriend or whatever, when we get rejected, it's not just that I'm not with her. It's also that I feel less as a man. You understand? And I think that goes on both sides. So I just want to encourage you guys very strongly, one, to be sensitive, but two, you can't leave your emotional health in the sensitivity of another person. You really got to guard yourself. You have to pace yourself slow. You have to be wise. You have to set up boundaries like we talked about earlier, and you also have to set up investments, places where you can invest to grow, and boundaries where you can protect yourself from going too far. All right? Regarding long-distance relationships. So you guys met at a youth convention. All right, good. I know that it's good for those close to you who you respect to give you input on things regarding a significant other. That you can't, that's it, right? Yeah. That you can't necessarily see or don't want to see. How can that happen in a long-distance relationship when they aren't in your everyday life? Let me read that again. Regarding long-distance relationships, I know that it's good for those close to you who you respect to give input on things regarding a significant other that you can't necessarily see or don't want to see. How can that happen in a long-distance relationship when they aren't in your everyday life? So what I'm understanding from this, I'm taking from this, right, is I don't know. All right, let me do this again. Regarding long-distance relationships, I know that it's good for those close to you who you respect to give you input on things regarding the significant other. So regarding a long-distance relationship, I know it's good to have people in your life that are speaking into your life, like mentors and parents and so on.
You're talking about the advice. You can't really see it, how they're looking at.
Oh, I got it. Thank you. See, this is good. She interpreted. Yeah, I know. Good for those close to you who you respect to give you input on things regarding a significant other that you can't necessarily see, meaning the advice. You can't necessarily see the advice coming into action or the relationship, being able to see, maybe the problems or to receive the advice because you're not always necessarily with them. How can that happen in a long-distance relationship where they aren't in your everyday life? So how can you give advice to people who are in a long-distance relationship? even though they might necessarily not see the issues in the long-distance relationship, because of the long-distance relationship, right? They might not necessarily see the issue. Like, for example, if, let's say, there's a girl who's dating a guy in a completely different state, and it's like, well, they're not really taking, advice because they don't see the issues that's happening between us because it's a long-distance relationship. Am I on the right? Okay, good. That's what I understood, too. Two things. Number one, be very, very, very clear in the advice that you give is what I would strongly recommend. Or if you're a person who's in a relationship and maybe you're not being able to hear, be very, very clear in the advice that you give. Point out why A, B, and C, you think this might not be a good idea. Now listen to me. If they lived in the same state, if they were living in sin, if they lived next door, if he moved into her house, if she doesn't want to hear what you have to say, she won't hear you. You understand? There are people that God in heaven is screaming into their lives for their eternal souls, and people aren't hearing the Lord. So how in the world are they going to hear me if they're that closed off? Do you understand what I'm saying? It's easy to shut your heart off and to say, no, I got what I want, and it's justified, and I got some friends that support me, and those are my real true friends because they support me. I had a best friend growing up, really close friend of mine, and he used to do some terrible things. He was doing drugs for a while, and I remember me and a friend of mine were talking about whether or not we should talk to his parents about it. And I said, I'm going to stay loyal to my friend, and no matter what, I'm never going to rat him out. My friend said, if it happens one more time, I'm telling his mom about it. All right, we were 18 at the time, 17. Yeah, 17 right around then. And it happened one more time, and this person went and told his parents about it. And his parents told him that, hey, this person said that you're doing drugs. And I thought their friendship was over. And our good friend came to my other friend and said, man, I love you so much because you love me enough to be willing to risk our entire friendship to tell me the truth. And I felt like a fool. I remember that. Because I thought to myself, I don't care about him enough to care more for him than he cares for himself. There are some people that are not going to hear you, and there are some times where you're going to risk your entire friendship to tell somebody the truth. I've lost a lot of friendships, a lot, from telling people God's honest truth, the best thing that I believed for them. You understand? I've lost a lot of friendships because of it. But there are, as I look in Scripture, a ton of people who stopped following Jesus because he told them the truth. If you love somebody, you'll tell them straight. And you'll risk the friendship. And you go, look, if I tell you and you change and we stop being friends, I care about you enough that I'm willing to lose the friendship if it'll help you. You understand? So I would strongly encourage you, one, to be direct, to be honest, to be straight with the person, and to let them know, look, man, I'm telling you this is not because I'm jealous, not because I want to cause you problems, but because I love you. And secondly, be aware that you might lose that friendship, and that's fine. That's A-okay.
And if you're the person in the relationship thinking, well, they don't know what's going on because they don't know the person, and you're justifying reasons to not listen to the people closest to you, I would really question that because they love you and for some reason they're talking to you. So look at it from another perspective, or try to just think clear-headed because obviously you're being clouded. If they're pointing things out, you can't just keep saying, well, you don't know. Well, you don't understand. Well, you don't know him. Well, you don't know her. So just, they love you. They're obviously talking to you about it. It's a risk they're taking. And so, I don't know, pray about it and try to be open.
Yeah, that's good. That's the next one. The reality is until you surrender something to God, you're not willing to really take a look at it. You understand? Until you're able to take that relationship and say, you know what, God, maybe what everybody's saying is right, and I'm willing to take a real hard look at it. But you know what the truth is we don't want to take a look at or talk to God or surrender something to God or open up a subject to talk to God about it because we're afraid of what he might say. He might say, let it go. And I don't want to hear that. I'm very happy with the way that it is. We pray all the time. We pray that, I just want God's blessing over X, my schooling, my career, who I marry, whatever, fill in the blank. We pray that all the time, right? Because we want God's blessing over this. We don't really want to talk to God about his will. We just want his blessing all over really what I'm doing with my life. So really what we want is we want our version of what we can call God's will. And that's not how that works. It's not how that works at all. Right? Can you imagine my son, Franklin, saying, Dad, I'm going to go and I'm going to eat a bunch of candy. And I just want your favor all over me as I eat this candy.
I want you to buy me extra candy.
I want you to buy me extra candy. Yeah. And I'm sure that would be his desire. But it's not my will. It's what he wants to call my blessing over his will. All right? His next question is, so I have a close friend who is dating someone who is toxic and is severely detrimental to them in their life. I've told him multiple times before and he won't listen. How do I help him without compromising the friendship? There is no magic answer for this. You might compromise the friendship by being direct. You might absolutely compromise the friendship. But let me tell you this. If somebody says, you know what, I don't want to be your friend anymore because you care about me enough to tell me what you believe is the truth, even if I don't agree with you, how good of a friend are they to you? Right? If they're willing to throw away your entire friendship because they're under the influence of emotion, how committed are they to you? Sometimes it's hard, man. In fact, a lot of times it's hard. It's hard to bring up something. But look, the best advice that I can give you is really this. Number one, you pray about it. Now, I know that that's a cliched answer, but listen to me. I have seen prayer work so many times that I can't not say that to you. All right, there has been so many scenarios where I have prayed about, and I could give you testimony after testimony after testimony, where I've prayed about a situation with a friend and prayed about it. And not thought good thoughts towards them. I mean, I actually prayed about it, where I just said, God, I don't know what to do, and would you please help them? Could you give me peace about this? And I just pray, God, because God, I know you have a plan for them and that this isn't it. And if I'm wrong, then, get me out of the way and change me, but I don't think I am. So, you pray about it. And I've prayed about so many scenarios with friends where I've had friends come to me and they were like, Eddie, you won't believe what happened. So-and-so just said this to me, and I realized that I was being this way, and that was the very thing I was praying about. Other times, God prepares the words in my mouth, and their heart to receive those words. Because you could have the right words, but if they're not ready to receive it, it doesn't matter. Timing is important, right? And God knows the perfect timing. Because you might have the right message, but they might not have ears to hear. You know, it's funny, there's that parable of the sower with the seed, and he casts all the seed. So the question is what kind of ground are you sowing into? And sometimes a person's heart's got to change until they're teachable. Sometimes you got to watch your closest friends or people that you love smash into a wall until they finally go, dude, I don't know what I'm doing. And then you go, hey, here's an idea. But until then, they're not willing to hear it. So the strongest thing that I would encourage you to do is, number one, pray about it. Pray about it, pray about it, pray about it. And then number two, be prepared to act when God gives you an opportunity to act. It may not come. That person might just be so calloused and cold that it may not come. And you got to watch them go through that entire roller coaster of pain, frustration, hurt, damage. Hopefully, they get through it. And in the end, when it all is done and over with, you can be a friend. But sometimes people got to go through a journey. Do you want to see anything on that? No. All right, off-topic question. I like those. Someone said, nice. Off-topic question. Someone said, my picture was provocative on Instagram, but I was fully clothed. I don't think that I'm dressing provocatively. What do you think they mean? What's that? What's that from Zoolander? Blue Steel? That's it, Blue Steel. Thank you. They were doing Blue Steel, that look. Somebody said yoga pants. Were you wearing yoga pants? Is that what this is about? So this is what I would say to that. You can tell a lot by a person's Instagram. You can tell a lot about a person about their Facebook. You can tell what they're into. You can tell what they value. You know, sometimes I like to ask loaded questions, not because I want an answer, but I want to know what your answer is. All right, I'm not giving away trade secrets here, all right? And I remember this one time I was doing an experiment, and I said, what's the most important thing to a Christian? That was a question I asked on my Facebook. What's the most important thing that a Christian should have in their life? And people answer differently. Somebody said prayer. They have to have prayer. It's the most important thing. Other people said the word, a good foundation. Other people said, a relationship with Jesus, with the Holy Spirit, right? Other people had said, a good church community to belong to. Other people had even said about, something in relation to family. It's the most important thing that a Christian can have is a good, godly family and a good godly community. Every one of those people, it totally revealed a ton about them. The first person was a total prayer warrior. The second one was super studious. Like in their free time, I'm like, hey, what are you working on? Oh, I got a bunch of, I got this project I'm working on during winter break. Dude, that's crazy. What class? Oh, no, it's a personal project. Okay, that's weird. It's a true story. They're like studious, and it just reveals a lot about a person. Your Instagram is going to reveal a ton about you, all right? Well, people aren't supposed to judge. Yeah, they're not supposed to. They are supposed to make assessments. You see, when the Bible talks about judging, it's talking about condemnation. The Bible also says that we should judge, not condemn, but weigh things out. Should I cross the street? There is traffic. Nope, judgment call, not going to cross. You understand? That's the most basic format, all right? I'm walking down the street. This is a dark alley. There are men in it. Should I go down it? Nope, gonna keep on going, all right? Those are judgments. Those are assessments that you make. You have to assess and you have to make a decision. And and so when it comes to the way that you dress, my question is this. This is great. Actually, let me say this. There's this great quote by Leonard Ravenhill where it says, a sermon born in the head will communicate to the head, and a sermon born in the heart will communicate to the heart. I had this great class where we were doing homiletics, which is the art and science of preaching. And we had to preach these short messages, 3 to 5 minutes. And I remember I was preparing, and we had this rubric they had to go through and grade somebody's message. If they hit all the points, if they had a hook, an intro, if defined the point, illustrated it, and there's a conclusion, what conclusion did they use, etc. And I remember I was praying about it the way that I pray about every message. It wasn't homework for me. It was a sermon. And I was praying about it, and I said, God, there's like 10, 12 people in this class. And maybe you want to say something to them for their lives where they are today. And I'm so interested in that. So I spent a bunch of time praying and fasting, not about homework to write, but about a message that God wanted me to communicate. It may not have hit all the points on the rubric. And I remember I shared what God had said in my heart, and I shared it passionately and with conviction and with confidence and faith, because I knew that that's what God wanted me to share. And at the end, the professor goes, okay, so how did you guys grade it? And more than half of the class sat there and they said, I forgot to grade because I was so focused on what he was preaching. I didn't look at the rubric. The point is that the way that you put something out there is the way that people are going to pick it up. You understand? If you share something passionately from your heart, people will pick it up. If you share something intellectually from your mind, they'll connect with it intellectually. If you sit on stage and you sing and you're so nervous and all you're thinking about is your performance, that's what everybody's going to see. All right? If you preach and all you're thinking about is how am I preaching? How am I doing? Everybody's going to sit there and wonder, boy, I wonder, is he going to do better? What's going on with his sermon? Nobody's going to hear your message. But if you focus on the message, that's what people will receive. So my point being, what are you thinking when you get dressed and you take these photos and you put them on Instagram? Because what you put out is what people will pick up. You better be sure of that. Oh, I really want to, I just really want to be desired. But, I want to do it in a way that I can be justified and it's acceptable. You think people aren't going to pick that up? They absolutely are. And I want to mention to you something that I've said several times throughout this series. Really unserious guys will absolutely pick that up and know that they can pursue you. And really serious guys will see that and know that they're not interested. Right? That's the reality. Right? Really serious girls, really godly girls will see that you put out there, what you put out there, and go, I'm going to pass. And really unserious girls will be like, oh my God, I want to go and have a conversation with that young man. So I want you to guard the image that you put out there of yourself, because it says a lot about you. I want you to share on that.
If Jesus was looking at your Instagram, would he say, yes, I am proud you're my daughter right now? Dress for Jesus every day, and no one, I promise you, will come up to you and say, hey, you've been taking provocative pictures. If you're doing this for Jesus, if you're using your Instagram in a godly way, no one will come up to you and say that. If someone is saying that to you, and multiple people maybe, why are they getting these thoughts? Why is that even something? Because I don't ever get anyone coming up to me and saying, hey, that's a really provocative picture. So then look around and see, what are other people taking pictures of? How are they portraying themselves? Is anybody else saying stuff to them? Or like, if it doesn't even cross your mind, you need to like look at the people that are talking to you about this and asking yourself seriously, why are they saying this to me? And I don't know, ask more questions. In what way is this provocative? Ask a guy that you trust, is this provocative to you? Because if if you're like a brother or a cousin or, I don't know, a mentor, even ask Eddie. What, no, because the thing is this, maybe girls don't understand how a guy sees things.
Yeah, that's very good.
But they do see it, and they're getting something from what you're saying with your picture. So, I don't know. There's a reason that's being said to you.
Yeah, and you can ask me, by the way. Let me see your water bottle. I'm going to make this real easy. If you go, I love coffee, and you take a photo like that, you understand? You see, oh, I love coffee. This is my coffee. Let me take a picture of my coffee and just tell everybody how much I love coffee. I'm going to keep it right here, and I'm going to take a photo, a selfie of my, you understand? Don't be foolish. If every single photo that you put up on Instagram is you looking over your shoulder and showing off your backside, don't, just be wise. You understand? If the focal point, pictures have a focal point. They have a point that draws your attention to it. If the focal point is a body part, don't do it. You understand? It's real basic, all right? I'm just being real direct, all right? I hope I can do that. I'm a young lady. All right, look, and so like youth leaders, we know all about this. When we travel to each other's cities, we talk about it. We're like, oh, that girl's from your city, right? And they're like, yeah, she's from my city. I know. And then we goof around about it, and we like recreate the photos. It's hilarious. Anyway, that's not true. Kind of, no, not maybe, sometimes. Anyway, so me and John the Bray and Pete, we have the best time. Yeah, just be wise. We don't recreate the photo and put it on Instagram. We just to each other because we goof around. All right. So I'm a young lady who is ready for and looking forward to marriage. Great. But fear that I will lose my individuality and the ability to stand on my own feet and make my own way in the world, which is something I cherish. How do I reconcile these two opposites? What a great question. What a fantastic question. So, how many of you know that I'm going to say two things right now? All right, two things. There's two things that I would want to say to you. There's more, but there's two that I want to address right now. Number one, I think it's great that you have your own identity, and you should have your own identity. For a while, my wife prayed, God, don't give me what I want, give me what I need. Do you understand? And I prayed for a long time very similarly. And the reality is my wife and me, our marriage hasn't taken away from my individuality. It's actually grown me. Do you understand? I'm not an individual by myself anymore, but I've grown because of marriage. And there are some things that do change. There are some things that absolutely do change. I don't just go and get food whenever I'm hungry. I always text my wife, hey, are you hungry? But that's not because I have this shackle, ball and chain of a wife that, oh, if I don't ask her, she's going to get upset. It has to do with your perspective, right? I ask her, why? Because I love her. Hey, honey, I'm going to go grab some food. Did you want anything? You understand? There's certain parts of my life that are different now, but they're not different because, and that's the second part that I wanted to get to. They're not different because marriage is a drag. Look, if I want to have a fiercely individual life and have nobody tell me what to do, all right? Nobody's going to tell me what to do, and I'm not going to change unless I want to change. You're going to have a hard time in marriage. You probably shouldn't get married unless you change that attitude, all right? But what I want you to understand is this, is that all change that isn't the change that I intentionally decide for my own life, all change in your life isn't bad change. There's a lot of change that happens that's good change. You can't cherry pick things either. Do you understand? Like, I love my kids. I love them tremendously. Are they a lot of work? Yeah. They're absolutely a lot of work. Are there times that they make me go nuts? Yeah. Whenever I'm trying to work on something and Moses needs the 9th snack of the day, do you understand? That boy loves snacks. And it's frustrating sometimes. all right? But would I ever trade all of the difficulties for the great experience that I have of having these two sons or having my wonderful wife that I'm married to? God, no. There's nothing in your life that you're ever going to be able to choose that's going to be all good always and have no drawbacks to it. Everything's got pros and cons, but the question is, what do you want? What do you want to do with your life? Do you want to be involved in marriage? Marriage isn't easy street. It's not like you're going to get married and then it's autopilot. Everything's going to go great. I can do whatever I want. That's not how that scenario goes. Marriage is something that you commit to and saying, hey, I want to make a life with you and I want us to grow together. And we're each other's sandpaper person, meaning, we rub up against one another, and sometimes I'm kind of sandpapery towards my wife, and she's kind of sandpapery towards me, but it really rubs down the high spots. Do you understand? And it makes us more. It makes us better. Change isn't easy, but it's good. Change isn't easy. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's difficult, but it's good. Not all change is good, but what I'm saying is, whenever there is change, whenever there is growth, there's growing pains, but it's worth it. So the biggest thing that I would advise you about this is it really depends on your outlook, because outlook will always determine outcome. All right, if you have a negative personality and you're always just looking at the worst and the glass is always half empty, then you're going to have a hard time in every single aspect of your entire life. All right, but if you have an optimistic outlook, then you're just going to be able to enjoy. You're just going to be able to enjoy all of the different things that come, and even hardships, you can find the good in it. You understand? It's also a security issue, right?
Yes.
Did you catch that?
But the thing is, what I've learned in marriage is that it really points out how selfish you are as a person. And if you're willing to accept that and let God grow you in a marriage, it's amazing, because I think marriage is one of the places where you learn to become more like Jesus. To sacrifice your flesh every day, not necessarily your purpose in life, because I think that having individual purpose is good. There's also something to point out about a purpose in marriage. Every marriage has a purpose.
That's good.
So find that purpose in your own marriage, and then realize God still does have purpose for you individually. So ask him about it. But just to have your own desires met and fulfilled and be my own personal woman, I think that needs to be crucified every day. That's not something that should be like, you go and be you, and if your husband doesn't like it, too bad. No, that's your flesh. You sacrifice your flesh every day. You crucify it, and you become more like Jesus, and you have to realize that you became an us, and work at finding out what that purpose is.
Yeah, and I want to say that's your flesh if you're married. If you're not married and you want to have, your own individual personality and ideas and so on, do that. Just don't get married. Just be single for the rest of your life and you can do whatever you want to do. It's safe, by the way. It's super duper safe. But safe sucks, all right? It really does. Adventure is where greatness is. All right, you got to take risks. You got to take risks in life. And I'll tell you something that my dad's taught me many, many times over. He's always taught me that, look, in life you're going to fail, but you fail fast. All right, you fail fast, you fail forward. And there's a third part to that I can't remember. You fail well. Thank you. That's what it was. You fail well, you fail fast, and you fail forward. All right? If you're going to fail in life anyway, you might as well learn how to fail really good. All right? and what that means is, how do you fail well? Well, you know what? I screwed up. I own it, and then I move on. And you got to do both. Number one, you got to own it. Because if you don't own it, then you're never, ever, ever going to learn from it. So you got to own it. You got to say, you know what? I did screw up. I own it. It's mine. I screwed up. And you can't stay there, because that's where depression sets in. You understand? Failure isn't falling down. Failure is staying down. All right? So when you fail, you own it, and then you got to own it and say, I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to do better next time. We're going to approach this differently, and then you move on. You confess it. You ask for forgiveness if it's that kind of a failure, and then you move on. All right? So that's how you fail well. You fail fast. In research and development, what's a better option? To try to research 10 projects at once, or to try to research one? And the option, the out of those two options, usually the easiest answer is, yeah, you research one. Statistically, it's not. It's you start 10 projects at the same time. Because you will find out very quickly which one of those you should stop investing money in. If you just research one, you're going to follow that rabbit trail all the way to the end and realize we just cost us $10 million in 10 years, time to start on number 2 on day 1, and it's now 10 years later. But you start off with 10 things at the same time in research and development, and you will eliminate the majority of them, and then you'll be on the right track to know exactly what you're going to do in a very quick amount of time. All right? So if you're going to fail fast. All right? Be very quick about it. Don't sit there and I made a mistake. I tried. It didn't work out. And now I'm going to sit there. I asked her out. She said no, and I'm going to be depressed for a month. Oh, no. You got to own that, and you got to move on, all right? You got to do it quick. Right? Rip that Band-Aid off and move on. And fail forward, which means that you're always growing and you're always learning out of your failures. You have to learn out of your failures, because if not, then you're just destined to repeat the same stupid mistake again and again and again. Yeah, so about that individuality, yeah, I just want to say, if you have an individual mentality where you're saying, hey, I just want to live my life and I want to make my own decisions, that's fine, but you shouldn't get married. But when you commit to marriage, you're committing to building a life together. And I'll tell you, it's an adventure not that I'm on or that Smida's on. It's not like I'm a minister and Simida had to become a minister's wife. That's not what happened. What happened is I'm a minister and God has calling in my life. All right? Do you realize that when I say I'm a minister, I don't mean that I'm a credentialed with the Church of God ordained minister. I mean, I'm a Christian, and she's a Christian. And God has calling in our life, and our Christian walk with the Lord has calling for us to work together to be able to pursue purpose, because we're on mission. All right? Now we're just on mission together. And I get to go on mission and adventure together with this sweet lady, and it's wonderful. I wouldn't trade that for anything. Is it okay to date, court a Baptist? No. Next question. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm kidding. Is it okay to date, court a Baptist if we're both ready for marriage and take it seriously and are both mature about it? Yeah, I don't think there's any problem. Sorry, let me rephrase. I don't think there's anything unbiblical about courting somebody or entering into a relationship with somebody and eventually pursuing marriage with somebody of a different denomination. However, I do want to say this. There are nobody's doctrine is exactly the same. Like mine and your doctrine, in the very fine details, are not going to be exactly the same. All right? You could court somebody who goes to a non-denominational church, which is right at Baptist church with a cool website, right? And you could court somebody from there, and that's fine. And there are people in a non-denominational church, or there are people in a Baptist church, for example, that are cessationists, all right? What a cessationist is somebody who does not believe in any of the divine works, the word of knowledge, a word of wisdom, supernatural healing through faith. They don't believe in any of that. And then there's other Baptists that are not cessationists. They believe that God does supernatural things all the time, and that he still exists, and not just exists, but works supernaturally in the supernatural realm here on earth today. The way that he worked with the disciples, he still does that today. And both of those people will be Baptist. So what I'm getting at is this, is whoever you court, just don't be unequally yoked. If you're like I speak in tongues every day Pentecostal, and you're interested in a young man who's I don't believe in the baptism of the Holy Spirit Baptist, you're going to have some problems. I don't recommend that at all. I think you're going to be incredibly unequally yoked, right? Scripture talks about being unequally yoked. It says, do not be unequally yoked with an unbeliever, right? So it's saying if you're a Christian, don't court somebody who's not a Christian, right? So that's what the text says. But I also want you to understand the principle there is about not being unequally yoked. Obviously, the most extreme example would be somebody who's saved and somebody who's not saved. But if you're the kind of Christian who's sold out from ministry and missions, that's what you want to do with your life, and you want to court somebody who attends church on Christmas and Easter, that's a bad idea. You're going to have a very difficult time in relationship. Also, let me tell you this. If you're a young lady who's like, oh, you know what, I'm going to start dating this guy because I'm going to help him get closer to the Lord. Listen to me. I love you enough to tell you that you're being foolish and you're setting yourself up for failure, horrible heartbreak and failure. And the worst conclusion to this is that you guys get married. That's the worst scenario, because a guy who will church it up for you will church it up until he gets you married. And that's it. You understand? Somebody needs to pursue the Lord because they love Jesus, because the Lord forgave them of their sins, because they realized that they were a sinner in need of a Savior, not because they really like a girl. You understand? So what I want to get at is this, is that the Lord never even commanded you to do that, because you will never find anywhere in Scripture God commanding people to change other people. God commands us to love one another. He doesn't command us to change one another. That's his job. Paul planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the growth. I can plant and I can water, but the transformation only God gives. It's good. Did you want to? No? Okay. How do I stop lusting after another person? I pray and ask God to take the feelings away, but they're still there and I don't know what to do. That's a great question. The greatest deterrent to sin is holiness. Oftentimes, our greatest goal, the bar that we set, is to stop sinning. When the most powerful and potent cure that'll help us to not sin is not to pursue not sinning, but to pursue being holy. You understand? Not sinning at best will get you at just outside of sin. At best, if you bat 100%, if you are perfect in your goal of not sinning, your best that you can hope for is to be the most lukewarm Christian that you can be, that's just outside of sin. But if you pursue holiness, every day you'll be further and further away from the desires of sin. You know, I'm really trying hard not to sin. Won't be in your vocabulary. What'll be there will be, I'm really trying hard to be holy, and I'm working harder at, at praying more. I'm working harder at this. It's not, man, how do I stop sinning? It's how do I learn how to read this better? How is I learn how to hear God's voice better? The sins that I used to struggle with 10 years ago, or the lack of Christianity that I had, or whatever you want to call it, my flesh, the parts of my flesh that I struggled with 10 years ago are not the same ones that I struggle with today. Do I still have parts of my flesh that I struggle with? Of course. Am I tempted to say or judge or convict or condemn people? Yeah, everybody is, especially when you drive a car in Sacramento. Anyway, lose your temper, right? But it's not like the same things that I struggled with a decade ago. Are you tempted? Yes. Do you act on it? That's the question. Am I just avoiding acting on temptation? No, I'm pursuing holiness. So 2 things that I would advise you. One, pursue holiness and ask God, what is your purpose for your life, and start pursuing that purpose. Oftentimes you discover purpose as you start walking with the Lord closer. And as you start walking with him closer, God will reveal over a season purpose. Secondly, what I wanted to say is... Secondly, what I wanted to say to you, let me know at what number, please. What number are we at? 50 on the nose? Okay. The leaders' retreat is officially full. Heads up. Yeah, just so you know. So we are officially sold out. But secondly, what I wanted to say is just, shoot, I forgot what I was talking about. Yeah, find purpose. Thank you. And then secondly, something that's a temptation in the body, in the flesh. All right, I would strongly encourage you to fight in the flesh. And what I mean by that is fasting. Fasting is how you discipline your flesh. All right, you spend real days in fast. And fasting, just like pursuit of holiness is not the absence of sin, fasting is not just the absence of food, it's the absence of food for you to feed yourself spiritually. So it's a pursuit of God and a disciplining of the body. All right, just because my body wants a soda doesn't mean it's going to get a soda, because I'm in charge. And you know what? I've had people say to me before, you know what? I just can't control myself. I just can't help it. The temptation is too great. Really, if your mom was in the room, could you control yourself? I bet you could. Right? If your pastor was over your house, right? Could you control it? I bet you could. You see what I'm saying? Of course you can. It's a deceit and a lie if you believe that. You absolutely can. It's your choice. And thirdly, I would also encourage you to make pre-choice choices. All right? Before you get into a place where you are tempted to make a bad decision, if you know that there's a habit that always repeats, like, every time I stay up until 3 in the morning, I'm always, by myself and I'm always thinking of this girl, don't stay up till 3 in the morning anymore. Make some decisions in your life. Well, you know what? I know I don't really want to change, the way that I kind of, have my schedule and so on. Look, radical problems call for radical solutions. The question is do you want to get better or not? That's the reality. Right? How far do you want it to go? I really should exercise. I bet you will once you have a heart attack. Right? That's the reality. So I just want to provoke you into understanding to pursue holiness and to discipline your flesh. Good? All right. Did you want to answer this one?
I feel like there is no one for me, and I'm saddened at the idea of being single. It's hard to stay strong in God, trusting in His promises. If you have the desire to be married, then that's good, and I think God put it there. So if God put that desire there, that means He has a plan to bring that into fruition. I know it's hard to wait, but there is someone for you. And I would just give that up to God.
Yeah.
Learn to surrender and to surrender fully. It's really hard. You might have to cry about it, like I did. But once I let it go and I just gave it to God and I said, God, I'm willing to be here as long as you need me, however old I get or whatever, I'm just going to trust you. And as soon as I gave it to God, not saying that this will happen to you, Eddie popped into my life. So sometimes God just waits for us to surrender.
Yeah.
But sometimes He might mean that you need some more growing to do. He wants you to draw nearer to Him. He has other purpose for this waiting time. It's not a waste. Make the most of it because you're only single once in your life. Once you're married, and that's a whole nother chapter of life. So enjoy it. The relationship you can have with Jesus now is like nothing you'll ever have again because once you're married, it changes. The dynamic changes. Not that it's worse. It's just a different type of relationship. So make the most of the time you have right now with you and God and enjoy every moment of it. It'll change one day. God has someone for you. You just have to wait and trust Him.
And let me add to that. If you are of like marrying age and you are this great godly young man, this great godly young lady, and you're like, I'm just going to wait for somebody to find me. Listen to me. Don't do that. All right? If you're like dead set on like, I'm going to marry a Romanian, right? And I want to marry somebody who has beliefs like us, our pool and our community is very small. Do you understand? So what I'm saying is go to the summit, go to youth conventions, go on missions. Look, I know that I'm sounding funny, but I'm being dead serious. All right? I had a friend of mine, well, I won't tell you the story, but the point that I'm just wanted to make is just, for the interest of time, because I have more questions that I really want to answer, the point that I was just going to make is just, you know, if you're somebody who's committed to the Lord and you're dedicated, you know what I mean? And you're just like, man, I just want to live out, you know, my life for God. Go on missions. Who do you think you're going to find there? Other people who are dedicated and want to live their life out for God. Like, that's a great place to meet somebody because there's great young men and young women in your age group all over the East Coast, all over America that you'll probably never meet. So get outside of our bubble. That's what I'm getting at. Get outside of your bubble. Is it wrong for a girl to put herself in the path of a man? No, Ruth did with Boaz. You totally should. You understand? You don't stalk him. That'd be awkward, right? Don't be like, hey, I was looking at you sleeping the other day. No, that's real weird. But no, absolutely. I just want to strongly encourage you. Look, if you want to get married and you're just waiting for somebody to happen upon you, don't do that. Go visit other cities. You have family members in other cities, go visit your family members, hang out, meet people at church. All right? It's a great, great, great idea, and I want to strongly encourage you guys to do that. How can men and women walk more in confidence and boldness while growing in love? How can men and women walk more in confidence and boldness while also growing in love? I think that confidence and boldness really comes out of knowing who you are. All right? When you're very secure in who you are because you know who you are, you're very confident. And then you have the ability to be bold because you're speaking from a position of confidence. All right? But while still being in love, some people will always misunderstand and misread things. Jesus was extremely confident, and he spoke out of love all the time. Yet a lot of people were offended. Right? But Jesus spoke out of love. I'm pretty direct with people because I love them, and some people don't like that. And they're just like, wow, you really, ought to just, relax with that. And it's like, look, if I didn't care about you, you know how easy it is to just be like, well, you just pray about it. I'm sure, God will help you through it. You know how easy it is to do that? But you know how fake that is? I'm not saying always, don't get me wrong, but I'm saying like I'm not saying anytime that somebody says, hey, I'm praying about it, that they're being fake. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, you know how easy it is to be fake? It's super easy. But there are about 10 billion other things I would rather do with my life than be fake. I just don't care. I don't care to be fake. I'd rather just be direct. I'd rather just be honest with you. And I try to, have finesse and wisdom in the way that I speak to people, but I always reveal my intention. I always say, look, if I didn't care about you, I wouldn't tell you. But because I do, I just want to let you know this. And I might be wrong. I'm not, but I might. But I'm not. No, there are times that I'm definitely wrong. And when I'm wrong, I identify to go, hey, man, I thought this and I was wrong. And, this is what it is. There are times where I think I'm going to be totally wrong before I speak, but I have faith that it's God that's leading me in a specific thing that I want to say. Isn't that how it goes, Mike, every time that God speaks to you prophetically as well, right? Where you're just like, this sounds insane, and I know it's the Lord, but part of me still wants to doubt and think like this is going to make no sense at all. And then you share something, you're like, there you go. It's terrible. It makes no sense. And the person breaks down, and they're just like, that was totally, you were peeking at my mail. So there are times, where God speaks through us. But what I'm getting at is just this, is that you grow in confidence and you grow in boldness. And some people might not understand that you're being loving and being direct. You can also be a jerk and be direct. You know what I mean? But I think it just really reveals your heart in the way that you speak to people and what you communicate to them. I feel like if I enter a relationship, I will not focus on God, but on the person that I'm dating. And it scares me at the thought that I'm not giving God my best. Answer that one. Do you want me to?
There are different seasons in life. I think if God is always at the center of the relationship, the person's obviously a Christian. If you're entering a relationship with them, that you guys can do things together, like pray together, read the Bible together, still focus your relationship around Jesus while getting to know each other. And yes, you might not be thinking of God completely 24/7 like maybe you were before, but like the illustration Eddie likes to give about the wheel, where you focus on different parts of your life as, I don't know if you want to explain that.
Yeah.
Quickly.
So sometimes we think of like a priority list, right? Like if you're going to lay out a priority list, it's like God is my number one, and then my number two would be like family. My number three would be, like school, career. Number four would be like friends. Number five would be like personal care and so on, right? But let me ask you this. God is my number one priority. My wife and my family is my number two priority, and let's say my work is my number three. When I'm at work, and let's say like I'm a contractor, right? So let's say I'm pouring concrete or something, and my wife calls me and says, hey, I want to talk to you, but I'm in the middle of concrete and it's drying. I'm like, hey, I can't talk right now. Well, I thought I was your priority. If you love me, then you'll stop the work and you'll come and you'll give me your full attention at any time, at my beck and call, and at any whim. Well, that's not how that works, but aren't I your priority? So the reality of life is that it doesn't work like a list of priorities. Because at certain times, there are certain things that are more of a priority. Right now, it's a priority that I do this job, or else we're not going to get paid and we're not going to have any money. So right now, my job is a priority over me talking to you. Right? So the reality is this, is that life is really a lot more like a wheel. All right? And each spoke has a different priority on it. Right? Because there's right... wife and marriage, right, and kids and family and work and school and friends and self-care and so on. And the wheel spins, and whatever part's touching the ground, whatever part of the rubber meets the road, that's really where your focus is. All of those things are a part of your life, and in the center of the spoke is God, because God is involved in my family, God is involved in my work, God is involved in my relationship with my kids, God is involved in my schooling, God is involved in every aspect of my life. You know what I mean? He's not a category. He's over everything. And then the way that life functions and operates is that, whatever you're focusing on right now is going to be your priority for that moment and for that time. Now, of course, if my wife calls me, she says, hey, I don't want to just talk to you, but I really need you to take me to the hospital. Well, okay, she's a priority, and that's going to go, right? If she says, hey, listen, I really need you right now, but literally the building's on fire, I'm going to go, hey, listen, I know that you really need me right now, but you're going to have to wait, because the building is literally on fire, and I got to go. You know what I mean? It's so there's different weights. I guess I should say the different categories, but it just depends on the wheel. Good. So I've been dating this girl for 6 months now, and I want to ask her to marry me. Good for you. But others say that it's too soon if we do get married within a year or plan a wedding in that time. Let me tell you a couple of things. Number one, I would totally not be engaged for 6 months. And I say that as somebody who was engaged for 6 months. All right? You got to realize that us growing up, we didn't have mentors. There was a lot of, You know how it is in ministry? The majority of the things that you do in ministry are things that you wish you had growing up. All right, that's the reality. The majority of the things that you do for other people are things that you wish you had when you were young. And we didn't have mentors, anybody to teach us, but we were engaged for 6 months. I would never be engaged for 6 months again. It's forever, by the way. And like if you're engaged for 3 or 4 months, it's a lot simpler. But anyways, if you're engaged for 6 months, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just my personal experience. It just felt like forever. And there was a lot of opportunity for temptation, which we didn't fulfill, thank God. But it wasn't easy. I'm just being honest with you. It wasn't easy. So you've been dating a girl for 6 months now, and you want to ask her to marry you. So a couple of things. Number one, I really hope that, one, you're old enough to be able to enter into marriage. If you're 15, this is a terrible idea. You should break up. Two, that you're spiritually mature enough, that you're mentally mature enough, that she's spiritually mature and mentally mature enough to be able to enter into marriage. Now, that just means that, you're healthy, you're stable. Three, I pray that you're financially stable. You understand? At least to some degree. Moving into your, parents' garage is not a good answer to that. But what I did want to say is this, it depends also on who your friends are. Like, when my wife told her American friends at school that we were going to get married, they all thought that she was insane because you're way too young to throwing your life away. But our culture and our community is very different, and we've been happily married. In 2 months from now, it'll be 13 years. We've been super happy married. We love our marriage and our life and our family. It's great. So I also think that it depends, on weighing out your friends' opinions. If your friends are really sensible people, I would really take to heart what it is that they're saying and ask them why. If they're unsensible people, I would strongly encourage you to, talk to some sensible people, get some good feedback, some advice, and then keep moving forward. If you love the girl and she loves you and you guys are of, right age and everything else is, lined up and good, yeah, you should get married. There's nothing wrong with that. What if you like a girl, but she is, this is about to get good. All right, what if you like a girl, but she is the sister of one of your close friends or vice versa? Should you pursue them despite the potential risk of negatively impacting your friendship? There's this episode of Friends. Bet you didn't see that coming, did you? There's this episode of Friends, true story, where Ross finds out that I know this is really happening. Just follow me along, all right? Where Ross finds out that Chandler and Monica are in a relationship and then eventually get married. And his comment to them is, "You're dating my best friend is dating my sister?" And then Chandler says to him, and he goes, "Yeah, but who else would you want to be in a relationship with your sister?" And he goes, "My best friend is dating my sister?" The point that I'm making with that is, I know two young men, Patrick, Jimmy Buhunitsa and Patrick Abuturaga, all right? They are best friends. And Jimmy Buhunitsa lives in Los Angeles and Patrick lives in Portland. And Jimmy was interested in Patrick's sister, Bianca, but he had no idea how to tell him. So eventually he told him, and Patrick was pretty upset right at the get-go. But Jimmy told him, he goes, "Hey man," he goes, "Dude, you like me, right? I'm your best friend. Who else would you rather have being in a relationship with your sister?" And it clicked to him. And Jimmy and Bianca just got married a few months ago. A year ago? A few months ago? A few months ago, yeah. Great couple. And they're so happy. And Patrick's so happy for him. The point being this, that if you're his best friend, and you're a good guy, and you pursue a relationship with his sister, if you're his best friend, he's going to be happy for you and for his sister. All right? Now, is there a risk that's involved? Because I don't know all the dynamics of it. Yeah, there's a risk that's involved. Is there anything on God's green earth that would hold me back from pursuing a relationship with this lady? No, there isn't. I couldn't care less. You understand? It just, people would ask me all the time when I was single, because I would travel on missions, and meet different people. I remember there's one time we were sitting around hanging out with a bunch of different people, and some of the girls asked, they were like, "Hey, Eddie, so what are you gonna do, when you find like the one girl you want to marry? What if like she's not that into you, or what if she's into you, but her parents are totally against you? What if the pastors?" And I said, "It doesn't matter what anybody says. It doesn't matter." It doesn't matter what the pastor, if he's anti-it. It doesn't matter if her parents are against it. It doesn't matter what she says. Like, I'm going to marry that girl. You understand? Like, I'm committed to it, and it's going to happen. And the reality is, if you really want to pursue marriage for the rest of your life with somebody, you shouldn't let something scare you away. I'm just being straight with you. All right? And if you're thinking, man, you know what? She's not really worth pursuing because I might risk this, then maybe you're not that into her. Just being honest with you. Few more. You guys all right if we go for like 4 more? Because I got 4 more and then okay. So Eddie and Simida, we've so enjoyed your teaching over the past 5 weeks throughout the relationship series and look forward to it every year. Thank you for your transparency, openness, and consistency in discussing a topic that is so practical and important. We really appreciate you. Well, I love you too. Thanks. I appreciate that. You just slow clap me in? Thanks, guys. We love you guys too. We love you guys tremendously. We really do. This is something that is so taboo to talk about, and all that we hear about is what we're not supposed to be doing in a relationship, but we rarely ever get to sit down and talk about what we should be doing and what God wants for us. Because you got to get married. How does that happen? You just wake up and, I choose you. It's not like Pokemon, you understand? Like, you got to... There's a Pokemon reference in my sermon. There's friends. This is great. Do you believe that for some/all people, God has one specific partner for them since his plan for us all is so detailed? So I believe that you have a soulmate. The person that you marry is your soulmate. And they become your soulmate when you marry them. All right? So let me give you an answer for that question as far as do you believe that God has one specific person for you? Absolutely not, because logically it makes 0 sense. Okay? And let me tell you why. Because if that was true, none of you, myself included, would ever marry our soulmate. It would not happen. You know how I know? Because let's say that I marry somebody who isn't my soulmate. I marry Simida. And let's say we have, right, she is my soulmate, but let's say I marry Simida and she isn't my soulmate and I'm not her soulmate. That means that who is my soulmate is now destined to marry somebody else who is not their soulmate. And whoever her soulmate is destined to marry somebody else who's not their soulmate. And if I have 50 kids, or 5 kids, so let's do that because it's more realistic. I have 5 kids. All 5 of my kids were not destined to exist because this is not my soulmate. So they can never have a soulmate. You think that one person didn't marry a wrong person within the first generation or second generation of mankind? Which would mean all of us are born outside of some sort of perfect soulmate marriage. You understand? So I don't believe in that at all. Do you want to know what the scripture has to say? The scripture says, marry each other in the Lord. That's it. So don't be unequally yoked with unbelievers and marry each other in the Lord. You know why I have a hard time with calling prophets for who you should marry? You know I have a hard time with that? For 2 reasons. 2 reasons. True story. All right. Number 1, every time that you have a problem in marriage, you're going to go to that prophet and say, well, you said that I blah, blah, blah was supposed to marry them and that everything would be great. Okay. That's why I have a hard time with that. Secondly, I think that God's desire for me and for you, and I'm not saying God doesn't work through prophets. He absolutely does. He works through Mike. He works through me. He works through a bunch of us. But secondly, I think that God's desire is for you to have a close enough relationship with him that this is the kind of thing that you're not going to rely on somebody else to give you feedback on, that you're going to talk to the Lord and say, you know what, this is important enough that I need to hear from you, God. I don't need this secondhand. This is the rest of my life. You know what I mean? You shouldn't risk that on secondhand information. I'm just being, straight and direct and clear, if that's okay. What, did you want to say something on that? Okay. What to do or say if your boyfriend tries to pass the line, as line I mean reserved for marriage. No, That's the sound of a shotgun. It has to do, I want to think of three things now because I don't want to say two things. It has to do with two things, and it really does. Everything comes in pairs, apparently. All right, whatever. One, it has to do with respect. All right, if he respects you enough to say, hey, I'm not going to make you or put you into a position or make you feel uncomfortable or put you into a position to where you have to turn me down and feel vulnerable that I might get upset or whatever. All right, if he respects you enough to say that I'm not going to do that to you. So respect is a huge thing. And secondly, if he respects you and says, I'm not going to cross that boundary, that's as good as saying, I'm going to do my best to not sin. But what you should really have in a relationship is a guy who says, not only am I not going to do that, we're going to pursue being in a relationship for purpose. Here's the path that we're on. I'd like us to pray about this. You know, the very first date that I went on with my wife, I took her to a burrito place, true story, because I wanted to see what she would order. I was like, is she going to order big, or is she going to be like, oh, I'll just have like a tortilla? Because I was looking for genuinity, right? And it's true. And this is what I was thinking at night. I
asked for a salad.
At 20? When did we start recording? I was 21. This is what I was thinking at 21, right? So, yeah, I took her to this burrito place, and we ate, and I had the biggest burrito it was like the size of a small horse. It was amazing. And I remember we walked back to the car, and I told her, I said, hey, I'm really glad, thanks, for accepting my invite, because I leaned up against her car door, so she couldn't get into the car, because I wanted to talk to her. And so she couldn't flee, And I told her, I said, I really appreciate you coming out. I'm really glad, that we're able to be out here. I said, how, like, whenever a person likes a person, that's how I started the sentence. Whenever a person likes a person, one of the two people has to make themselves vulnerable and say, hey, I'm really interested in you, or I have feelings for you, and so on, more than just friends. And it's always a risk, because the other person could say, oh, no, I'm sorry, you misunderstood. And it's always a huge risk that person takes. And she's like, yes. And I go, okay, I've always been a strong believer that it's the guy's responsibility to take that risk, because if I, as a man, care about you, I'm not going to put you in that position to make yourself vulnerable, but instead I'm going to take that risk, because as men, we have this innate call to lead and to take initiative and so on. And she goes, yeah, I agree with that. And I go, okay, so with that said, just want to let you know, I've been praying about this for a while, and I'm really interested in you. I'm interested in you more than, just a friend. And I think the feelings are mutual. And she goes, I've been praying about it too. And I said, great. So then I asked her, I officially asked her the way that you would ask out in the 1950s. I said, so you want to go steady? And anyways, but I told her, I said, look, I want you to understand what my intentions are. This is day one, guys. I said, I want you to understand what my intentions are. I said, my intentions are, I really want to I want us to pick a day a week when we're going to pray and fast, both of us together. Because I want to know if this is God's plan for our lives and if we're going to be a good fit together. And my intention from today is to see if we're a good fit. And if we're not, I want to be able to recommend a friend of mine that you would be a totally good fit for. All right? I don't want to be in this kind of relationship where I give you all of my heart or you give me all of your heart and we become extremely vulnerable and we risk getting extremely hurt. I'm not interested in that. I just want to see if we're a good fit for marriage. But if we end up finding out, that we're a good fit, my intention today is to court you, to court you, and then to ask you to marry me and to spend the rest of my life with you. That's my intention. And she didn't run away, which is good. But I was extremely direct, and I let her know this is the goal. So she wasn't sit there left in limbo going, how do I tell him to not cross these boundaries? I defined the boundaries, and I said, this is the direction I want to go in, if you'll join me. And she said, yeah. And then within 7 months, we were engaged. That's our story. All right. Is it a terrible thing to choose your career over starting a family if your spouse is on board, of course? No, I don't think so. I think that every family, you guys need to time your own family the way that you need to time it, all right? Some people want to get married and have kids right away. There's nothing wrong with that. There's pros to that, all right? You're going to have little kids, right away, but, okay, you get married when you're 20. When you're in your 40s, your kids are in their 20s. You're still young. You get to run around with them. You're not, fat and out of shape, all right? You get to have grandchildren for a lot longer. All right. The downside to it is that you have to figure out marriage and parenting at the same time, which is a lot to figure out. And just like everything else that you're a rookie in, you're not going to do both well at the exact same time. You're not going to do them as well as you would if you possibly won't do them as well as you would if you were to do them separately. What we decided in our marriage is we wanted to have our kids right around the end of my 20s, beginning of my 30s. So that way when I'm in my 50s, they'll be in their 20s. That's our goal. And when I'm in my early 50s, they'll be in their 20s. So no, I won't be able to, play soccer with them nearly as much or whatever, but I'll be a little bit more financially stable. It'll give us 6 years to figure out marriage. Then we could figure out parenting once we're stable. I'll be more financially stable so I could pay for their college, which is something that I'd love to do, put away, money for college. I'll be wiser in my 50s, so I'll be able to give them advice. So there's pros and cons. There's pros and cons. Am I going to be alive for my grandkids as long as somebody who had their kids early? No. But the point is that, if you want to do your career for a season and so on, you guys figure that out as a family. The Bible doesn't define one way or another on that subject. All right? All right, this will be the last one. In the last year or two, the men that I have been meeting have tried to convince me to change my career to something more feminine and appealing to a marriage. You need to meet different men. Although my career isn't necessarily ideal, this is what I am passionate about, and I know this is where God wants me. Because of this, I have no problem walking away from a possible relationship. Good for you. Feeling no guilt whatsoever. How do I express this passion/calling without coming off as heartless or even picky, so to say? So this is what I want to say to you, big time. You don't have to win the heart of every man, just one. You understand? A bunch of guys might not be interested in you because of the career that you're pursuing. That's fine. You don't have to marry a bunch of guys. You just got to marry one. You understand? And for every person, I got to tell you, there are people that are going to be a good fit for you like you would not believe. My brother John is a unique guy, all right? He's just a unique guy. We said all of our lives, who is going to marry him? He's so weird, all right? He's just... And then he meets this young lady named Yana. Let me explain to you. Their Christmas card last year was my brother John, because they're doing an addition on their house, with a wheelbarrow, holding his wife in a wheelbarrow in the middle of the construction site, and it said, "Merry Christmas." And I said to him, John, how in the world did you ever convince Yana to take this photo and to send it out? He goes, it was her idea. My point being that there's some guy out there going, you know what, people just don't understand me. And then one day you guys are going to meet, and it's going to work out, all right? So you just keep being exactly who you are. And don't betray what it is that you want out of life because other people might want to put what their belief of what you should be on top of you. When I closed down my architecture firm to pursue ministry full-time for free, for no money, everybody said I was insane. You understand? When Francis Chan made over $1 million with Crazy Love, and he put it away into a fund, and he was just going to give it all away, everybody said he was nuts, right? And then they said, well, you should just keep at least 10% of it for emergencies. You know what his answer was? What, because the starving kids in China is not an emergency? You be yourself, and you be yourself 100%. Don't hold back on that. And don't ever be ashamed for what you believe that God called you to do in life. No way. For a long time, people shamed me because I closed down my company and because I decided to work for free for the church. I had somebody say to me once, they're like, well, as the man in the family, you're the breadwinner. And they looked at me and they said, well, actually, you wouldn't know. And then they continued their sentence. I've had experiences like that. But I am not ashamed of the call over my life or of the gospel or of what it is that I have done with my life. Not at all. Not at all. I'm not ashamed of that, not 1%. And the reality is that there's going to be people that are going to try to shame you for pursuing what you believe God is calling you to do in your life or being the kind of person that you are. And those people, I can't tell you enough how much they just don't get it, what it is that you're doing. You're on an adventure. You're being unique. You're being yourself. You're fulfilling the call that God has over your life. Don't be ashamed of that. Double down on it and enjoy it. All right. And with that, I want to invite you guys to stand because we're going to close in prayer now. That was actually the last question. every head bowed, every eye closed. Father God, it's been so much fun teaching on relationships, and it's been so great just learning what it is that you have to say scripture-wise all of these different weeks. And even today, God, just from life experience and from a biblical Judeo-Christian perspective, God. And I'm just so honored and privileged, Lord, just at the ability to just be a part of everybody's lives and to just be on the sidelines and have this great perspective, watching people grow in their relationships with you, God. God, I pray, God, for healthy marriages. God, I pray, God, for healthy relationships. God, all the different questions that were asked today are from real people here that you know who they are, you know their questions, you know their journeys. And I just pray, God, that, God, you would alleviate all of the concerns in their lives. And that, God, you would guide them, oh Lord God, to just your wonderful will. Not our version of your will, but to your wonderful will, God. God, I just pray, oh God, your blessing and your power and a growth in faith and in surrender in all of us. And I just pray all of that in your name. Amen. God bless you guys. Make his face shine upon you. Good night.